This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not dispense medical advice. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health providers if you have any questions regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking such advice because of something you have heard on this podcast. Welcome to a show that we like to call Prostate Cancer Real Talk. Did you know that in the U.S., 1 out of every 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer during his lifetime? 1 out of 8. And black men are 50% more likely to develop prostate cancer in their lifetime and twice as likely to die from the disease. But hey, we're not here to quote statistics and tell you how tough prostate cancer can be. Rather, we are here to create a supportive community of survivors. A place where we can discuss the real-life coping methods from the perspective of a married couple who are living through it day by day. Our hosts, Elle and Shay. This is Prostate Cancer Real Talk.
We're very fortunate today to have with us a Emmy-winning author, JP Mack, who has written several books, one of which has to do with his experience with prostate cancer.
In this episode, we welcome Emmy Award-winning writer John JP Mack, author of the lighthearted look at his prostate journey entitled They Took My Prostate, Cancer, Loss, Hope. Diagnosed with cancerous prostate tumors, a broke and unemployed animation writer focuses on the humorous as he struggles to comprehend his carcinoma, select between surgery and radiation, and land a new healthcare provider, all in less than 2 months. JP's book is recommended for every man who is joining the club that no one wants to belong to, the Men of Prostate Cancer. JP's hilarious, rollicking autobiography chronicles bureaucratic bungles, medical complications, and a difficult post-treatment recovery. His funny, pull-no-punches memoir is a short, yet hopeful essay and is a perfect read for guys and their families facing this #1 cancer among men.
Once I wrote cartoons for a living, had a lot of fun, but then I got prostate cancer. Then my health care ran out. Then I had to undergo this ugly, complicated operation.
Doctor, that's not the prostate!
Oh, so what? Big deal. You're not going to tell, are you?
No.
Eventually they got my prostate, but the fun was just starting. Doctors said I'd face 3 critical post-op issues. Issue number 1, impotence. Would I ever again make love to my darling wife? Issue number 2, incontinence. Issue number 3, real bad incontinence. Incredible stuff. I lived through it and I don't believe what happened.
Let's join JP as he shares his journey in the lighthearted yet insightful way that only he can. Ellen Shay, take it away.
Hi, JP. How's it going today?
Good, Al. Good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. JP, tell us a little bit about your experience and, your book and your article and what kind of, what inspired you to capture your experience in writing?
Let me talk about the article first. Portions of my book were quoted in the article, but I believe it was written by Janet Farrar Worthington, who is the co-author of Dr. Patrick Walsh's, really the last word on prostate cancer. He wrote a book that I was advised by my urologist to take a look at when I was diagnosed. So she has been a great advocate for prostate cancer. I think she has survivors in her family. But she asked me if she could take excerpts from my book and put that into the article. And I said, why not? So the thing is, I've always, as a writer, I take notes through life, don't always use them, but I always tend to write things down. And I remember when I finally got home, because my case was unusual in that it took so long for me to finally get released from the hospital. I just sat down and just started writing everything I could remember about it, not knowing that I would eventually write a book. And I don't think it really struck me that the book had any impact at all until I started reading the comments on Amazon, and wives and kids and men who had gone through this would say thank you for telling us what it was like for you and doing it in such a way that at least we could get a laugh out of it. It's the one thing we can control in life is how we react to the situations that happen to us. So if you can, accept it for what it is eventually and try and find a laugh in that, it'll be better. Or at least you'll feel better in any case.
JP, can you tell us, because in our previous episodes, we kind of shared with the listeners how Elle found out. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about initially finding out? Like, were you getting your PSA checked on a regular basis? How did you find out, and what was your reaction as well as your wife's reaction?
I found out because I went to get a physical, and they do a blood test every time I get my physical, and they found that my PSA had inched up from a lowly 3.2 to 4.3 over the course of a year. So my doctor recommended that I see a urologist. So that took about 2 or 3 weeks to set up. By the time I got into the urologist, they took another blood test, and my PSA had almost doubled in that time period. So he says, well, you qualify for an autopsy or a biopsy. We should give you a biopsy and check this out. So from what I understood, when you have a PSA between 4 and 10, and you have a biopsy, there is a 25% chance that biopsy will come back positive for prostate cancer. So my thought was that's 75% that says no cancer. So I didn't really worry about it. It was just another medical procedure. So I don't think it really dawned on me how serious this was until I went and actually had the biopsy, because that was an event that drew me down to earth at once. I had never been through anything like that. So I thought, holy smokes, I have crossed a line somewhere. I must be in official old age now, because it really hurt. So anyway, I said, okay, well, it's fine. I'm still 75% to the good. So I had to come back for a follow-up. And my urologist is a chatty guy. He's upbeat. He's, friendly. He's always asking about, how things are going. What are you doing? I was just here. I did this, He came walking in, and I knew. All he said was, you came back positive. That's all he had to say. I'm going, why me? That was the first thing. Why me? Right. So he's explaining this sheet that had the test results on, and it had my Parton score and Gleason score, all these things. That it was like he could have been talking Egyptian to me. I really didn't hear anything, because all I'm thinking was it came back positive. It came back positive. So I went outside and I was just numb. It was this hot August day, and I just sat on a bench outside the facility, and I was, oh my God. So I called my wife and let her know. I said, well, this is the thing. I said, I'll find out more. He told me to go read this book by a Dr. Walsh. So we'll go get that, and then we'll find out what's going on. And she was cool. She said, well, that's not good news, but, we'll get through it. Yes. We'll do it. Yes. And her support was, I don't know how I could have done that without her, because her support was really vital to getting through the whole situation. So we read that Walsh book, and we didn't read all of it, because everything you thought about prostate cancer, it's in there. He put it all in. He was a big, my urologist told me, he said he was a big mover and shaker in prostate surgery years ago, when they used to do it manually. Not manually, but they wouldn't use the robotics. The robot, yes. So they'd cut you open like a sockeye salmon, and they just go wading around in there and trying to find. You have all these delicate nerves on the prostate that affect your incontinence that affect, your sex life. There are all these delicate nerves on the top of it. And so Walsh, apparently, this is kind of the deep weeds of prostate cancer, but I'll just go ahead. He came up with a way to kind of suction out the blood so that the surgeons could actually see what they were doing. Because before they just get in there and they'd cut away, and then your life was different by the time they were finished. So he found a way to suction it out so everything could be clean. But he worked most of his career at Johns Hopkins with prostate cancer. So he wrote this medical book that Janet Farrar Worthington, I think, translated into English for the rest of us so that we could understand what was in there. And basically, you sort of treat it like rules of the road. You flip through, you find out what you want to know about something, and then you read. And then I used my medical report, and it said Parton score. I don't know what that is. So I'd go look it up. Gleason score. I don't know what that is. I'd go look it up. So it was helpful in at least giving me the terminology to be able to talk to the doctors and get answers that I could understand. But anyone who has cancer, they become experts in their cancer. That's one of the first things they do, and their family does too, because everybody ends up reading as much as they can so that you can understand what's being said to you, so you can understand what your options are. So I really didn't. I had gone through a lot of health issues. It hit me all at once. I had surgery for my knee. I used to be a marathon runner, and so I had to have surgery on my knee. I had surgery for a bone spur on my shoulder. I had skin cancer. They had a Mohs surgery on my nose. It was like every year was, the surgery du jour. And I just didn't want another operation at that point. But I had to look at my options, and that's one of the things they asked you to do while they go in, before you go back in and see the doctor. So my urologist said, learn as much as you can, look at this book, here's where you are, and then decide, I'll tell you what I think your best chances are, but you explore, you go out and talk to other people. So the goal, of course, is to move prudently, but I asked him that too. I said, what if we just hold off for a year or two? Because I was having trouble with my healthcare at the time, and my COBRA, which is an extension of healthcare, was running out. He said, well, we'll rush you into everything. We'll have you talk to everybody. He said, there's a urologist or there's a radiation guy. You can talk to them. He says, I would get a second opinion. You can talk to another urologist covered by your plan and just decide what you want to do. And so you go, my God, it's like you've suddenly said, well, you have to learn aerodynamics before you go up in the plane. I meet with another doctor. He goes, I don't know. I'd get the operation. And I said, okay. And then I talked to the radiation guy, and I kind of like the radiation approach. We didn't know if we'd get the same radiologist if we got new insurance, which we would definitely have to do. Then the preparations are just, it's like you're throwing a wedding for your daughter or something like that. There's just enormous preparations. There was a clock ticking. And so I was just feeling just feeling the pressure. And I know my wife was too. I mean, finally it was getting up to time, getting close to it. And they said, you'll be out in 1 or 2 days. And someone else told me that you'll be done in 1 or 2 days. You'll be home in 1 or 2 days. So I took them at their word. Foolish me. So that was the lead up anyway to everything. And it was done in 60 something days. And we were tired before I even had been operated on.
Just a reminder, to ensure that you stay up to date on the latest episodes from PCRT, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button.
So Elle's doctor told him that if he went the radiation route and then the cancer progressed, that then the option of removing the prostate was no longer on the table. So did your urologist explain that to you as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was another factor. You can't go back. It's one or the other. Also, because of my age, certain aspects of radiology would not have been recommended for me. Brachytherapy. I think they stick a piece of radiation up a certain part of your anatomy, and then, healing occurs in some fashion. So anyway, I didn't feel bad that I was too old for that, but,
Right. Yeah.
but they would still, that would be it. I would be bound to therapy then.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to jump in and see if we can get John to go to his book and read an excerpt. As I mentioned before, the thing that caught my attention, and we talked about this in one of our earlier podcasts, was that, hey, this is a serious subject, but it's okay to continue with your life. As Shay said one day, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, regardless. But I'd like for you to give us an excerpt from your book and give us the title again, so that when people go to our website to see it, they'll know what they're looking for. Do you have an excerpt that you can share with us?
Absolutely. The book is They Took My Prostate, Cancer, Loss, Hope. And this is the first chapter. It's called Mark of the Cobra. And I started right in the middle of the biopsy. Cringing in discomfort, I stared at the wall, curled up on the examination table like a possum under a shrub. Tissue samples were being harvested from my prostate. Earlier, I'd received a Novocaine injection, but the doctor must have bought a bad drum from Amazon because I felt everything. With a noise like a mousetrap closing, whap, the biopsy needle would snag a tissue sample and I would squirm. In addition, a transrectal camera had been inserted up my butt like a plumber's snake into a drain. Operating this transrectal camera biopsy needle was my urologist, Dr. Vaughn Trackman. Around my age, early 60s, with more salt than pepper in his black hair, he had sad brown eyes, heavy-lidded, sleepy, as if he were perpetually up late. Snipping his tissue samples, Trackman kept up a distracting patter about an NPR radio program called A Prairie Home Companion. I think he just wanted to distract me from yelling too much. So, he was just talking away and this and that. I'm not hearing him. I'm just listening for the next whap, because that's when my attention will be at its most poignant.
In reading that, it brought back, I had actually, and maybe this was a subconscious defense mechanism, but I had forgotten, about the process that I went through for the biopsy. It was just like you said, it does sound like a mousetrap snapping shut when they're taking those tissue samples. And you just don't know what to expect when you go in there. Again, I'd like to come back to the book and to your experience. And, from your perspective, what is your hope that the book and your sharing your experience will do for people who are considering or who have received this diagnosis and considering the surgery option or the radiation option? What do you hope that your book does for them?
Well, let them know that there's hope. In other words, I had a particularly extreme series of things go wrong for me. So, and I've had people say this in the comments on Amazon, for example. My case wasn't as bad as yours, but I'm glad you wrote that. Or my father is going through this, and I saw this book and I got it for him, and he was laughing, and so it was much better. In other words, it kind of takes a very dark event in people's lives and at least lets them know that you can get through it. Probably won't be the life you had before, but you can still do okay. I've talked to other guys, as you probably know, guys sprout up like crabgrass. Once you've had a procedure, you'll find out everybody in their life who ever had it, or if they had it, or everything. So one guy, he was telling me he had the procedure. He went home the next day. Then he went in for a follow-up with his doctor, and the doctor just handed him a series of exercises and said, these are Kegels. Just do these, and they'll help you with your incontinence. In other words, I thought it was shockingly thin in terms of the information you need to know, because you don't even know where it is that you're trying to strengthen or reach. You have no idea because you just don't use it. So the woman I went to see, she was the first bright light I had in a long time, because it looked like it just was terrible. I tough getting through the night. And at least initially, I still had, they call it a Jackson Pratt drain. And it's a little big egg-sized piece of plastic they attach to one of the incisions, and it drains it. And I had to go home with mine. So in addition to having to go to the bathroom during the night, I had to make sure I emptied this Jackson Pratt drain. And at first they said, we want you to make notes of what it's like, how much there was, and what was the reading on it. I tried that for about 3 nights. And then I said, I can't even remember my age. I'm not, this is not the time I should be filling this thing out. For some reason they weren't too put off when I didn't come in with the numbers.
Everyone stops doing that. You're going through enough and you just say, the heck with this. Again, you brought another point to mind. One of the things that I explained to the listeners that you have to do is when you come home from the hospital, you've got that catheter inserted and, it's collects the urine. And then when you get done with that one, you can go to a smaller one, and that allows you to be a little bit more mobile. Can you talk about that process that you went through and how you went from the larger catheter to the smaller one, and then to the point where you could now graduate to depends?
They gave me, I guess they were generous. They gave me two bags when I left the hospital. I had the big party bag, and I had the smaller one, which was, the traveling bag for when you're out on the road. And they showed me how to hook and unhook these. And then that became part of the nightly procedure, which is I would have to get up and empty the bags and the drain for about 2 weeks. And then they said, okay, we're going to take them out. And I was just delighted. The doctor's gone by now. He leaves the nurse to do the cleanup work. She says, okay, well, here we go. We're going to take that out. And then she gives me a pad. And she says, here, just put that in your underwear. And she didn't say, here comes the rain. But you could sort of get the impression that she had the idea that more was on the way. And so I was just delighted. So my wife and I was, let's go out for breakfast. Let's get some coffee, and so.
You don't need that coffee, by the way. Go ahead.
What did I learn that? So anyway, we were having a great time. And then I get up, I stand afterwards, and it was like, it was like I was trying to put out a brush fire. I mean, it was, boom, there it was. And I go, holy smokes, where'd that come from? And then that was the start of it. I was burning through the Depends, and then I was burning through these pads on top of it, and then nothing seemed to quench. And I said, okay, no coffee. Okay, watch the liquids, nothing seemed to help. So I went in to talk to the doctor, and I said, boy, I just feel like I'm a urine machine here, and I was put on earth for this. And he said, you're doing better than you think. I said, well, I don't think I'm doing good. He says, well, you're comparing it to where you were. He says, where you are now, post-op, he says, you're not doing bad. So that's when he gave me the referral for the woman who really helped me. And then he gave me exercises and he'd go over them with me. At first, I would go out, I would walk 10 minutes. That's about all I could take. And I'd put on a baggy shirt so people wouldn't see me walking around with all the bags hanging off me. I looked like the Bionic Man if he had failed in his operation. So that helped. So I'd go out twice a day and just walk around it all. And then finally, once I got hooked up with the physical therapist, she really began to nail it. She says, try this. Just don't wait until you go. Try and anticipate, get to the bathroom and make sure you go there. And I could only walk. It was difficult. I would get up, but I would be jackknifed over, because if I stood up fully, then that puts pressure on the bladder, and then away you go. So I would just be walking like the old comic Groucho Marx, I'd be walking like that into the washroom, but I was anticipating the event. So that was a big help. And then I was able to use the exercises and then just to start getting me back in shape and moving again.
JP, so I actually, if you don't mind, I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned something and I don't know exactly what happened. So L had surgery on Friday. He was discharged the next day on Saturday. So why did you say you were in the hospital a week or two?
Week.
So what happened? Because everyone's case is different. So I want the listeners to know, because we said, hey, L had surgery on Friday. He was home on Saturday. So in your case, you had surgery and it was a week later. So can you explain to the listeners, because they may not experience what L experienced. They may experience what you experienced. Why did it take a week before you were discharged?
Right. Most people will go home. Mm-hmm. But in my case, several things happened. My blood pressure started to drop dramatically. At the same time, I was in intense abdominal pain, and they weren't able to figure out what that was. And eventually they determined it was I'm pronouncing this wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway, an anastomosis or something like that, which is basically, once they take the prostate out, you still have all of you have to reconnect everything in there that used to run through the prostate. So what can happen sometimes is either urine can leak out into the surrounding area, or you can get a clot in that, which I believe is what I had. I was just in pain constantly. I was going from pill to pill. Plus the blood pressure went. So finally, it took about 3 days to get that. And then they wanted me to eat, or at least be able to take food and have my GI tract working again, which I wasn't able to do. So that took another few days. And then finally I was able to get up and move around. You're clinging to this thing. I called it the click whir, because that's the sound it makes about every 8 seconds. And something goes off on that thing and it clicks and whirs. At the end of my week, I finally figured out how to mute it. Before that, this thing's going off all the time. It goes off when you're low. If the saline is low, if the plasma is low, it goes off to notify the nurses. So this thing is a little noisemaker. Anyway, everything finally settled down by the time I reached, I think I had been operated on a Monday. And then Sunday afternoon, they finally felt I was well enough to go home.
Okay. And so we discussed wearing the Depends. From your experience, how long would you tell the listeners to be prepared to wear Depends? That's kind of like a hard pill for guys to swallow.
You're right. It is. And it varies. The people I've talked to, some guys have had to keep wearing Depends. Mm-hmm. Other guys say that they've been able to master it and they're fine. The leakage will be there initially. There's nothing you can do because you have to learn how to use a new muscle group. I found traveling, I would wear the Depends because it's so uncertain. The first time, I think I mentioned to Al, the first time I flew, I went up to see my sister in Seattle over Christmas. So we had no idea. It was like washroom bingo for us because we'd get in there and I'd have to dart over and find the first washroom and okay, we're covered. Get on the plane, 1001, 1002. Okay, we're up. Boom, get back and hit the washroom and get off before we got the luggage. Hit the next one, and then my sister, she's going, what? I thought you were okay, because every time I had to go to the bathroom, I'd stand up and I'd be jackknifed over, walking out. Then I'd come back, I'd be fine. It was better off with the Depends. But this is the way it is.
Yes.
It's like a sports injury. The thing with sports injuries is people always remember the way they were. Mm-hmm. So if you're injured and, you used to run a certain time or used to do something, you always remember that. And so there's this disconnect between the way you are today and the way you were. You have to do what I had to do was I had to accept the way I am today. Mm-hmm. This is the new me. This is the new reality. Right. This is the way it is. Now, it doesn't have to stay here. It might get better.
Right.
But that's going to be up to me. I'm going to have to have that attitude that it might be better. And my wife helped me with that immeasurably. It's a team sport. all
Correct.
cancers
Yes.
all
Yes.
cancers are family cancers, but this in particular is, you definitely need help in that. So she helped me, realize it doesn't have to stay the way it is. It can get better, and in time it did. It wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Right.
I came out of it.
Just a reminder, to ensure that you stay up to date on the latest episodes from PCRT, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button.
JP, what about family and friends? And, we're wrapping up here, but before we go, I want to make sure that we've covered your perspective on as many issues as possible. I shared my experience that I had with some friends. I mean, it's not something that you just go out immediately telling everyone, but I had a select group of people that I told, and the reactions were different. What was your experience with that, and how would you suggest that any of our listeners who are dealing with this issue handle it?
I didn't go out like you. I didn't go out and lead with this, but I told a few people, very few people, exactly what happened to me, front to back, which was, engrossing. I don't go into all the details unless they ask me. Generally, just telling someone that I've been through that. But if someone's interested and they want more details, or they've received a diagnosis, I'm glad to open up and talk to them. But I generally don't, I want to be known. I guess the book is my way of saying this is what happened, and if you want to talk about it, I'm fine. I didn't pull any punches, so especially guys are interested, because at least the last statistic I saw, it's one of the top killers of men. A doctor told me once, if you're a man and you live long enough, you'll die of prostate cancer, barring anything else. So it's just something that slowly develops within us over the years. And since everyone faces that, there is more than a passing interest. The older you are, if you haven't experienced it yet, there's an interest in it. But again, I give enough to gauge where somebody's coming from, or to gauge what their interest is. And if they seem to want more, then I'll more than glad to tell them. And if they're, whoa, too much information, then fine, go your way.
As Dennis mentioned in our opening, 1 out of 8 men will develop prostate cancer. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of men. But you just don't hear the discussion about it.
I would think that if someone took the lead, for example, what is it, the Susan Komen breast cancer?
Yes.
So for a while there, you'd watch a college football game, and the guys would come out once a year, and they'd be wearing a pink band or something like that for the Susan G. Komen breast cancer. So maybe we could have a yellow band or something like that for the prostate cancer. In other words, if there were some organization like that, right. If the Prostate Cancer Foundation said, we're gonna do this is a day we're going to dedicate to prostate cancer, second greatest killer of men in the United States, next to lung cancer, I think, is still edging us out. But if some organization or something made an effort, and the media said, yes, this is a worthy goal, and got behind it, I think you would find there would be a difference in the people talking about it. But right now, it's guys in general won't. We won't ask directions either. Don't want to give that information out. So if the media or someone else got behind it, I think you guys starting this podcast is a great idea. This is how it needs to grow. And I think that more guys would come forward. And, I think it's so important that, say, over 50, that you start making sure you get a blood test, and you note that among the triglycerides and everything else on there, there's something called PSA, and find out what yours should be. Your doctor should be able to spike to it like mine did and get me on the right road. That's important. If you can catch it in advance, it's, your chances are so much better.
Thank you, JP. God bless your wife. Tell her she did an amazing job. You're still here. And I know it has a lot to do with her. God bless her.
Yes, it does. It's like I said, it's a team sport. So,
yes. God bless her. God bless you as well. JP, thank you so much. You're awesome. You rock.
Oh, thanks, JP. Thank you all. Thank you. Appreciate you guys, and good luck with this. This is great. I'll be doing a shout out for you every chance I get. See you soon.
find out more information on the guest you just heard or previous guests and a list of Prostate Cancer Real Talk episodes, visit our website, prostatecancerrealtalk.com. And if you have a question, comment, or if you would like to share your story, send Elle and Shay an email, ellandshay@prostatecancerrealtalk.com. That's L-E-L and Shay, S-H-A-Y, @prostatecancerrealtalk.com.